Welcome to the PrisonPOD, a podcast for all people experiencing incarceration. The mission of this podcast is to save lives, restore hope, reduce suffering, and recidivism. Many show ideas come directly from the listeners, so please write the host. PrisonPOD, Post Office Box 294, Orono, Maine, 04473. Here is your host, Ms. Valerie.
Greetings and welcome to the PrisonPOD. Today's guest is Dr. Robert Mossi Alexander. He is a speaker and a filmmaker. He concentrates on education around incarceration, and his bio mentions sparking conversation about justice, education, and humanity, which are just perfect subjects for the PrisonPOD. Welcome, Robert, to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Valerie. As mentioned, I'm Dr. Robert Mossi Alexander, and I'm the founder of Hood to Higher Education. And I got the hoodie on today as a shameless plug. And Hood to Higher Education, we inspire organizations to build culturally relevant programming into schools and into a prison, into juvenile justice centers, and we work to dismantle the school to prison pipeline, and we create the prison to promise pipeline.
Can you tell me what sparked your desire for education behind bars?
Yes, so I am a formerly incarcerated educator myself, a juvenile defender, a juvenile incarcerated a person, and kind of had that, what my auntie would call that come to Jesus moment around the age of 18. Between the age of 18 and 19, I went to county jail 3 times, and education changed my life. It saved me, right? It took me to a place, it gave me opportunities to step outside of the walls in which I sat down in. I'm from the Bay Area, so if you're familiar with the Bay Area, then you're familiar with North County, Santa Rita, many of the county jails out here. School just was the catalyst to my success, right? So my mantra has always been success is a series of a few smart decisions, right? So once I started doing research on the things that kept folks out of prison, the things that kept folks that allow people to not recidivate, I started learning stats that 43% of the folks that are educated, it reduces recidivism, right? I also learned that the people that complete college programs while they're inside are twice as likely to find stable jobs. So in doing the research and working with system impacted folks, this is what I focused on: education, mentorship, and building careers, because I feel like the folks that are justice impacted, if we have something to lose, then we won't fall back on the things that led us to where we got, right? So just to kind of sum it up, I had a one-track mind when I got into my doctorate program at the University of San Francisco. Many of my classmates, they would tell you, Valerie, that in the beginning, every assignment that I wrote was about justice impacted. So when just impacted folks like myself. So when it was time to write my dissertation, I was just pulling from the assignments that I had already written. So I decided to interview 6 formerly incarcerated Black men that use education, mentorship, and community as a way of not recidivating. And the long title for my dissertation was Reclaiming Our Humanity: The Foundations of Success for Formerly Incarcerated Men. And out of that, I met a up and coming videographer at the time. Shout out to my videographer. Her name is Chardonnay Mason. She is moving from the Bay Area back to Chicago. We became very close during this period. I invited her to record my first interviewee. His name is Marlon Lewis. I grew up with him, and magic took place. So instead of kind of doing the run of the mill, coming in with a handheld recorder, Valerie, we came in guns blazing with a recorder, and I started to interweave these stories of how they found success post-incarceration. And then in doing that, we found a lot of overlap that we'll probably get to later on in the podcast. But this led me and took me on my journey of working with formerly incarcerated folks.
I have to tell you, I love the title of the film, Reclaiming Our Humanity, because I feel like when people are in prison, that's the first thing they try to do is strip yourself, everything about you, your identity. And I really like the way that you put the film together. And I want to let our listeners know that are on the outside is it is on so people can
Yes.
go there and watch it. And it's very powerful because it is first-handed stories and it goes through. So I really love the project that you did.
Thank you. Thank you.
And
Yes. Can I just real quick? It's on. If you want to bypass those commercials, it's on Amazon Prime as well. I am lucky enough that I landed on a streaming service, and right now I am fundraising for my second film, which is called Burning for Justice. And I met an amazing young lady that is also justice impacted, like many of the listeners and many of the folks that are inside right now. And she ended up at a fire camp, Malibu Conservation Camp 13, and came out as a firefighter. So her story is amazing, and I'm looking for funding right now to finish this project. But this project is going to be amazing as well.
yeah, I saw a little clip on about it, and it looks like another really good film. Well, since we're talking about all these wonderful creations that you've done, can we talk a little bit about the books you've written?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I want to, full transparency. I started off as a children's book author. My father was a playwright, so many of the people that know my dad, throughout the San Francisco Bay Area, he wrote plays for the Lorraine Hansberry Theater and the San Francisco Mime Troupe that were political satire and that were politically groundbreaking. So, and my mom was a librarian, so that kind of paints the picture that we had books in our home. So, I kind of, I had. And that's why I founded Hood to Higher Ed, because I had one foot in the hood and one foot in academics, and I tried to merge those worlds. So I started off as a children's book author because my first book was a memoir called Can't Let Nobody Ride My Bike, because I grew up in a community where it was the end of the heroin epidemic, beginning of the crack era. So we always had this mantra, hey, I can't let nobody ride my bike, because if you let somebody ride your bike, you may not ever see it again. A lot of bikes are getting stolen in my neighborhood. So this book is about peer pressure, bullying, promiscuity, avoiding the entrapments of the neighborhood that could potentially be detrimental. Right? It's kind of an eye-opening tale, and it's based on my life. It's a true story. Right? All I did was change the name. The main character is Ronald Anderson, but it's based on my life. And that was my first book. So then that took me down. I wanted to write more books. I'm an author. I love to write. I typically, will wake up at 5:30 a.m., 6 a.m. and write for an hour. I co-authored a book with my daughter called She Hit Me First. And then I wrote the companion to that, He Hit Me First. And this was about how sometimes we learn conflict resolution, not only in schools, but we learn how to resolve conflict from our parents. So in both books, how, there's always been this age old debate about spankings and, should we beat our children? So young Jamila, and She Hit Me First, learns, she thinks that she has to resolve her issues with her hands, right? Because that's what, every time she got in trouble, her mom would give her spankings. So it wasn't until she meets an amazing mentor at school that teaches her conflict resolution, ways in which you can handle conflict in a nonviolence way, that's when she started to become the upstanding person that she ends up being. And all of these books are available on Amazon, or you could go directly to my website, Hood to Higher Education, and purchase. So those are my three children's books. And then Reclaiming Our Humanity is based on my dissertation, as well as the documentary. And then I also wrote kind of a intro to college, which is called Corrections to College, for folks that are considering pursuing higher education. That's Corrections to College, based on the year and a half that I taught inside of San Quentin for Mount Tamalpais, formerly the Prison University Project. And I love teaching. I'm a father, and many of what I learned as far as being a professor, I learned as a dad. Showing my children how to do certain things and how to maneuver through the life. So I took some of the life lessons as a father and use those in higher education, whether it's at a college or whether it was for Mount Tamalpais. And Corrections to College came out of that, which is the last book that I've authored, which is available on Amazon as well. So those are the 5 books that I've authored. And then when you're writing and then time goes by, you're like, wow, like I've authored 5 books. Like you can't really believe it, but I'm not going to stop. This is something near and dear to my heart. Growing up, I saw authors of color. My mother always had me, around literature. So, to have somebody that is like me, that's from the hood. I grew up in East Oakland. I've had many experiences, good and bad, and I could speak to some of those experiences and coming out on the other end shining, right? Knowing that transformation happens one decision at a time, right? Knowing that some of the things that have influenced my life, my craft, my own healing, nobody can take that away from me. So when I put pen to pad, I want folks to experience that. Whether you're in or out, I think it's beneficial to anybody that's reading.
I have a suggestion for a book. I don't know if you have to have your own ideas on your books or if there's ideas that come about that you think about writing about, but I have been looking for books that explain to other children what it's like when a child has a parent who's incarcerated.
Mm,
And I'm not a child writer. I'm fact and research type. I've never written a children's book. Not that I probably can't, but I haven't. And I find that there's very few books out there for young children that explains incarceration. So it's not just a scary thing and that the other kid's daddy isn't a bad man or
yeah.
mommy isn't bad. So, and I have grandchildren, so I talk to them about that because that's what they say, why do you talk to these people in prison? And I says, well, they're no different than your daddy.
Yeah.
So those are the things that I'd like to educate kids because it's very isolating to the families also when somebody's incarcerated. So just to, put that on the back burner there.
Valerie, that's an amazing idea, and if I don't steal your idea, I'm I'm hoping somebody.
You can take it. If you
I'm
can write a
hoping one of
book
the
about
list,
it, I would love to see that because I think it's needed.
and and I don't have to tell you this, because you're doing amazing work, Valerie. The Prison Podcast. When you reached out, I had to jump at the opportunity to be on your show. I'm thankful to be here, but we know that there's a stigma, right, connected to being incarcerated, and you mean to tell me that there are a lot of folks that are kind of maneuvering through life, as if they've never made a mistake, right? You went left when you should have went right, or you never got a traffic ticket, or you never stayed in a relationship longer than you needed to stay in one. So these are some of the things that I think about in terms of mistakes that can take place. And I'm just a proponent of second chances. So when you have somebody that is the offspring of someone that is incarcerated, they could internalize that. They may have a hard time bringing that up to their peers. They may be embarrassed, right? There may be things that it's hard for them to mention because they don't want to be ostracized. So having a children's book that can make sense of all that, to where children can unpack having an incarcerated family member, would definitely be something that can move the needle forward.
Attention. Choreo, a better way to connect with loved ones who are incarcerated. Without Choreo, family and friends wait for a call and hope they can answer. With Choreo, inmates can call or message at any time. When your inmate calls their Choreo number, they will hear your voice and text messages. Inmates receive and leave messages at any time using standard prison phones, making connection easy and predictable. For information about Choreo, visit choreo.org. Stay connected.
I know there are a lot of good programs that are, reconnecting, family members to folks that are incarcerated, and they're doing good work to make sure that line of connection stays strong, right? Because if you think about the nucleus of the family, whether you're the breadwinner in the family or you weren't, when you would divide a family, male or woman, and you have kids, and then you take one of the people, you have a dual income, you take somebody away from that, that could be very harmful to the nucleus of the house, right? So, we want to do everything within our power to donate money to make sure that, folks are taken care of. They have the resources that they need. When we talk about that wraparound support, I think that's what's needed.
And you with the education, books are so important. And people say, oh, well, there's libraries in prisons. Well, there is, but if you're looking for specific subjects and books that you're trying to learn on, books coming from the outside are really important. So I always tell people if there's a book program for your local prison, even if you only have $5 to donate towards it,
Yes.
do something because those programs, my big thing when I started doing prison work is we had a book program and people could request books that they wanted. And those were their personal books. They got to keep them. And you don't know how many people wrote to me and said they never owned a book. They
Yeah.
never owned one.
Hmm.
And they said that was like a prized possession now, this book it's theirs and they can pick it up and they can reread it. And I always said, pick up a book and read. And someone would say, well, I can only read at a 6th grade level.
Yeah.
I'd say, do you like comic books? Do you like science fiction? Pick up something that's simple to read. Just get in the habit of reading because the more you read, the more the skill builds and you can read more. And, people say a lot of people read fantasy in prison. Put those books down.
Yes.
You can read them for entertainment, but pick up something that's going to benefit you because it can take you down a whole other road.
Absolutely. I'm thinking of folks that not only took classes in prison, but there were folks that were scholars that end up being incarcerated, like Angela Davis, Shaka Senghor, Jimmy Santiago Baca. There are so many artists in prison, whether it was literary arts or arts through drawing, painting, that go underappreciated. There are artists right now that should be highlighted, right? And I don't think that we highlight the brilliance, behind the walls enough.
It's unbelievable. I have a whole shelf on my bookcase here, and it's all written by people that are incarcerated. Every one of them. I have like 9 books that are written by people that are on death row. And I think it's really important that we get to hear their voices and their words. I think it's a right. I think it's an actual right for us to be able to learn from the people that are experiencing their life experience you know,
Absolutely.
and the same thing with art, so much is expressed through art and so much can be told, the stories can be told through art. And I feel that, again, the people that are inside have the right to share that. And I believe that we have the right to view it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I taught inside of San Quentin, and I remember the first time I started writing something on the chalkboard, and one of my students raised his hand. I thought he was going to say something profound. And he said, Professor Alexander, your handwriting still looks like you're healing from trauma. But I learned so many things from the students that I had when I taught for Mount Tamalpais, formerly the Prison University Project. They were teaching me life lessons, right? And a lot of them had what I call world knowledge. They were talking about things that were happening in Africa and Darfur and, the genocide in Rwanda. So to where I would lead sometimes, I had a lesson plan, right? I had curriculum that I had to follow in terms of the intro to college. We focused on this is how you study. This is how you read a textbook. This is how you take notes. This is a time management unit. This is a study skills unit. This is proper etiquette for da 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 da. And they were coming in, not only were they soaking up knowledge, but they were able to impart knowledge onto me, in terms of things that were happening in the world, what we call life skills for higher education, which is very important, in terms of once we are on the outs and now it's time to hit the workforce, all of these things will become useful. It's not only your soft skills that are going to come in handy, but kind of having like a world knowledge that you can draw from when people are asking you questions in terms of, your background, or do you know a little bit about a few things, right? So I just want to just shout out my folks that are on the inside that are just scholars, that are amazing people, right? And how often do we think of mentors that are people that, have made it, they haven't had a bump in the road. The people that we need to be listening to are the people that have gone through being on the inside. We refer to these folks as trusted messengers, credible messengers. They have done the work to make themselves better people. We need to listen to these men and women, right? Those need to be the guiding light. And I tell you, like, I got so much when I was in the pod, in Santa Rita, I got so much game about my case. You know what I mean? I definitely am going to do a project that is aligned with what is it called? Just Mercy. Cause I have a friend that is a system impacted lawyer. Right. So, I can't wait to sit down with him so he could tell his story, because how unique is it for somebody that has been on both sides of the law? Right. When you're going, and some of these prison libraries can be good, depending on where you're at. And some of them are behind, right? They need more funding. Everything is based on the amount of funding that is coming into your facility, whether we like it or not, you know what I mean? So where San Quentin has kind of become a model out here, when you go to different prisons, whether it's Susanville or Solano, or any of the other ones, they may not have the programming that a San Quentin has. Why? Because a lot of community orgs have kind of rallied their monies together to bring programming into San Quentin. So you think every prison is not going to be the same, right? So a lot of folks are getting transferred to the prisons that have the good programming, and everybody can't get transferred, right? Because that has to be good time served. You know what I mean? Um, moving up on that that waiting list, right? So I'm a big fan of prison education. I know we need to step that up. You know what I mean? I don't know what it's going to take in terms of voting for prison ed to get ramped up, but our tax dollars need to go towards that.
That's right. I want to remind our listeners that we're listening to Dr. Robert Mossi Alexander, and he is talking about the great work that he does around education now, and his wonderful books and his film work. And we're going to take a brief break and bring you a short message, and we will be right back.
He wants a whole village. He says he loves me in a love language I cannot speak. Leaves me in pieces. Says he wants peace in a love language I cannot speak.
You recently had some exciting news, a collaboration with Edovo. Now, does that mean that some of your material is now available on the tablets?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So for the listener,
Ooh.
Edovo stands for Education Over Obstacles. And a lot of the folks inside are now streaming curriculum, movies, different documentaries, different classes on tablets. So reclaiming our humanity is in over 100 prisons. So if you are inside and one of the facilities has a Edovo account, please look at Reclaiming Our Humanity. There's also a certificate connected to it. I have designed a class that is around Reclaiming Our Humanity, where I ask you certain questions of how you connected with it. Now, remember, Reclaiming Our Humanity has to do with education, mentorship, and community. So those questions will be embedded in the curriculum so I'm excited about that. Thank you so much for asking.
That's really great, because a lot of people, when the tablets first came out, there wasn't a lot on there for them to go to. It was more entertainment, and it really seems like they're focusing on education now, which is great. In this podcast, the Prison Pod is on the Edovo platform, so those listening to this can also find your programming there. So that's great.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
So now I'm going to ask you a question I don't ask very often. What does Robert do for fun?
Oh, that is a great question. I consider myself a fun guy. I like to travel. I really like to travel. Traveling can be expensive. I like spending time with the family. I'm in Northern California, so we have trails by my home. So we hike. I have boys. I'm a boy dad. So going to sports events, I like watching my Golden State Warriors. I like hiking. I love going to the beach. That's one of the benefits of living in Northern California is we have access to the beach, and we can also get to the snow if we really, really want to. So,
I
I
can
guess
share
that.
some with you. We got about 6 inches last night.
Oh, is that right? Okay, okay. Yes, I like being able to go to the snow. Our snow is Tahoe, right? I like being able to drive 3 hours to Tahoe and then come right back home. Like I don't want to deal with it all the time, right?
Yeah,
But if
that's
if
what I
I
would like to.
but Miss Cartonio, if I could sum it up, I'm an outdoors person. So
That's great.
camping, swimming, the beach. That's the main thing I like doing for fun.
You would love Maine then. I don't know if you've traveled to Maine, but
I've never been to Maine.
it's a beautiful state. And as far as hiking goes, we have Mount Katahdin here in Cadillac Mountain, and they're absolutely beautiful. And we have in my opinion, one of the nicest state parks, Acadia National Park, is
Outstanding,
gorgeous.
outstanding. And I love your accent too. It's national
It
park.
isn't, it's not as bad as it used to be.
Okay,
Before I
okay.
went to school, it was very Maine, and I never used ER. It was always everything ended with an A.
Got you. One of my favorite rappers used to always say, from Maine to Spokane, like Spokane, Washington, like coast to coast. Oh,
Now, I have one more question. Books. We've been talking a lot about books. Do
yeah.
you have any books that you might suggest to somebody who's looking into starting education, especially if they are in prison?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Michelle Alexander's The New Jim Crow, right? That's one of my favorite books. I can almost consider that almost like the Bible, if you're starting off with the criminal justice reform, The New Jim Crow, the mass incarceration in the era of the New Jim Crow. Shaka Senghor has 3 books now, Letters to the Sons of Society. He's also written Righting My Wrongs. I will pick up Dr. Robert Alexander's Reclaiming Our Humanity. That's a great one. I would check out Angela Davis's Prisons Are Obsolete. I got a couple more. That I might circle back to that I'm kind of drawing a blank on. But
That's a
those,
great list.
yeah, those are good ones to start off with.
And let's see, has there anything that we haven't? Websites. Do you have a website?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Hood to Higher Education. Google Hood to Higher Education. This is my hoodie. This is my brand. This is my website. You'll see all my information, but it's actually Hood #2 Higher Education. Right? You type that in the web browser, I'll come up. If you see somebody else, they stole my idea. Right? I'm the only person. It's been trademarked. Also, the other thing, like if you Google my name, don't just do Dr. Robert Alexander. I have a very, very common name. There are probably hundreds of professors named Dr. Robert Alexander. Put that Mossi in there. That separates me from everybody else. Yeah, I just want to just remind folks, you are more than your worst moments. Like we know that, right? You can rebuild, you can restart, you can redefine yourself. I did. The people that are in my documentaries are walking testaments. Check out Reclaiming Our Humanity and be on the lookout for Burning for Justice. If anybody wants to partner with me for Burning for Justice, I am still looking for funding because I'm trying to, I have self-funded both documentaries myself, but on this second project, I'm a dad and I'm an educator. So, there's not a lot of money in that. So I'm looking for help. So, another thing I just want to say, every person in here has a bigger purpose. We're bigger than the walls that hold us, right? We know that. So just, continue to keep grinding and keep going down that path towards righteousness. It's all about liberation.
Thank you so much. I want to remind our listeners again that we've been talking with Dr. Robert Mossi Alexander, and you have been listening to the Prison Pod. Make sure to tune in again to the next session.
You have been listening to the Prison Pod, a podcast not just for those in prison but for anyone who has been affected by incarceration. Ms. Valerie would love for you to write to her with your questions, comments, and show ideas. The address is PrisonPod, Post Office Box 294, Orono, Maine. 04473.